Hello, bună ziua, buongiorno, buenos dias, bonjour, and welcome to the Human Protocol of Vivexa podcast. I'm Theodora Savlovschi-Wicks. I'm the founder of Vivexa Partners and your host. The idea behind Vivexa is pretty simple. We're here to shine a light on the individuals inside the drug development industry. Because whilst we absolutely embrace AI and automation, the tools that free us from the monotonous, the repetitive, the less glamorous corners of work, our focus stays firmly on human interaction. The emotion, the trust, the joy of a new role, the shift that happens inside a team when the right person walks through the door. The Human Protocol sits at the heart of all that. Each episode, we explore the human, either as a professional navigating a career inside drug development, or as the patient at the very center of the protocol we're all here to serve.
In today's episode of the Human Protocol of the Vivexa podcast, we sit down and speak with Anna Titkova, MD, PhD, MBA, country head Ukraine, and Director of International Operations at Pratia. Anna shares how building Ukraine's first dedicated clinical research unit in March 2020 became the beginning of a much larger story about leadership, responsibility, and continuity through crisis. This is a really powerful conversation about clinical research in Ukraine, about patient access during conflict, and what it takes, really, to keep trials moving when safety, stability, certainty can no longer be assumed. We also explore the human side of trial continuity, from local decision-making and team resilience to the real people behind every protocol, data point, behind every patient. This is a story about resilience and humanity at its very core.
Hi, Anna. It is a pleasure having you as a guest on the Human Protocol podcast. Thank you so much for agreeing to join us as a guest. Obviously, we've been in touch for a number of years, and I'd love for our listeners to hear a little bit about your story and about what brought you here. So first things first, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Hello, Theodora. Thank you very much for your invitation. It's a great pleasure for me to share my story, to share my expertise and my life with your audience and with you. My name is Anna Titkova. I am a country head of Pratia, Ukraine, and International Operations Director of Pratia. This is the international site network. We operate in 8 European countries and the United States of America from the previous year. We've got the network of clinical research sites, our own or affiliated based ones, where we perform clinical researches. In Ukraine, I built this business in 2020, and we've got our personal clinical research site. It was the first clinical research unit in the country dedicated exactly for clinical researches, and the range of affiliated sites in Ukraine.
Thank you so much. So obviously you founded Pratia Ukraine in March 2020, pretty much when the world started going a little bit mad. And you've opened that first clinical research site in the country. What was it that made you decided, to build something at that particular moment? And what did you believe that others perhaps didn't? Or what did you think was the solution that others didn't see?
Yeah, it was March 2020. Felt like the world was holding its breath. I still remember this 20th of March, the official announcement of the COVID pandemic, isolation, stop of the movements of the people. And exactly a week after, on the 27th of March, I registered 2 companies on the territory of Ukraine. And for many people, it was a time to pause. But for me, it felt like a moment I couldn't ignore. I remember thinking, if not now, then when? And Ukraine was usually considered as a good country for clinical researchers. We had this quite potential in clinical studies, and I felt a kind of responsibility to act on it. And I am a doctor, and I've been in clinical research for many years before 2020, for a part of clinical research team. And for me, this was my personal decision, something deeply personal at that time. I believed in people overall, in our doctors who were the same as I am, about patients, about teams, and more than I believed in the fear of uncertainty. And then others saw risk, I saw that possibility. And maybe that I believed more than anything was that waiting for the right time is not just another way for standing still. And probably that was exactly the time when we should do something. And actually I did. So during the 2 years, from 2020 to 2022, I arranged a clinical research site. As I said before, it was dedicated purely for clinical researchers. I built the network of 8 affiliated clinical research sites, and we have started some COVID studies. That was the peak at that period of time. We were the world's best recruiter in hospitalization COVID study. We randomized 500 patients in vaccination study on one site only in COVID vaccination study. So actually, that decision that was done in March 2020, it was right one and one of the best one in my life.
Wow. I can't even imagine what that was like to build it. When you look back at how things were, how you were before February 22 and where you are now and who you are now, what is the most honest thing you can say about what has changed?
So when I first began, I believed that success was the right path. Control in my hands, certainty in every step. I thought if I worked harder, pushed faster, I could bend the world into my will and could reach whatever I want and to come to this my final destination. But the life has its own plans on you, and perhaps the most honest answer is that I lost a certain kind of innocence. As before February 2022, I believe that was enough planning. Yeah, that was discipline. This is how actually I did before, receiving some of my scientific degrees, coming into this scientific path in medicine to become a doctor, a cardiologist after the general medicine certification. But that belief doesn't survive a war. And what replaced it was something probably more stronger. I've become more direct, more decisive, but also aware of how fragile everything is around us. And I feel things more deeply now. Such things as responsibility, accountability, fear even, some kind of gratitude even to the situation that we've got around us. And perhaps I stopped chasing every door, each door that opened simply because it was here. I built now bridges that matter. So I would like to find people with whom I can build something meaningful, with whom I can have this communication, collaboration, as life really taught me that you never arrive to your destination. You just keep evolving.
Wow, there's so many powerful lessons in what you have said there, and I guess a lot of us, especially in the eastern side of the world, right, we were taught to believe that hard work and very good work ethic and determination and ambition helps you be where you are. But as you said, sometimes life has other plans, and it is quite difficult to navigate the unknown. So what would you say, during those first days of the war, the first days of the invasion, what would you say um, those meant for, for your team, for your patients, the trials that you were running? How did that feel like?
Oh, these first days are difficult to put into words, into exact words, and there was a shock, of course, for everyone outside of Ukraine and much more for people staying in the country. But very quickly, it turned into a kind of focused urgency. So people were just calling, doesn't matter, colleagues, someone whom you know, of course, relatives, friends. So just with the question, where are you? How are you? Are you alive? So what we can do, how we can help each other with some even information that is coming, which you can get from someone, like an advice, like their path, what they are doing, how they are managing their life during these first days after the invasion. Of course, if we're speaking about clinical trials, everything was stopped. I believe you heard about this, and each sponsor, each client, they immediately stopped operation on the territory of Ukraine. So they stopped ongoing clinical studies, they stopped shipments, they stopped any kind of collaboration, let's call it in such a way, with Ukraine during the first days, weeks of the war. For our patients, of course, it was terrifying. Many of them were already vulnerable because the system they depended on felt like they might collapse. And for the team, of course, it was also impossible to balance. How to balance the fear of their lives, the lives of their family, and at the same time, they need to show up for others. And of course, I remember that moments that we discussed it. Of course, some of the people, they leave the country, they leave the city. Some of them made this decision that they need to stay where they are now, because that's the best place where they can feel the safety. Let's call it safety in that period and that definition. And they have their work, they have families, they have parents, they have friends here, and this was their decision to stay in the country. But of course, we do not know what was the best answer for everyone. Everyone made it according to the situation where he or she was at that period of time. But yet continuing, even in the small ways, gave people a sense of structure, of the sense of purpose. When everything else felt like it was falling apart, that was maybe one of the main things that we were working on at the beginning. We were paying salaries for 3 months, the first 3 months during the war period, so to help our employees to maintain their life during that period of time, to find out where they can stay and what they can do.
Oh, okay. I guess, in some of your previous conversations, you've described clinical trials as really the care for many of your patients who don't necessarily have access to alternative treatments. What would you say that means on the ground, for a patient who's losing access basically to the care?
Yeah, we were trying to find this patient, first of all. So how it was going on. During the first probably few months, it was stopped everything in Ukraine. So it was silence, any movements at all. But then after the 2-3 months, we started to receive some notifications from sponsors, from CROs, that they allowed us to continue the follow-up visits. So any new recruitments, but at least to follow up with the patients. So, and we were working with our patients. We were trying to find out where they are, who are still in the country, in the city, or in the region, Kharkiv region, for example, as this, or the majority of my sites, they were in Kharkiv as well. And some of the people, they took this medication, they go to the patient homes, and it was also stressful because you were knowing this route of your, for example, the study coordinator or a nurse to the patient home, and when you're receiving some of this phone notification about new bombarding somewhere, shellings, and you understand that you're a person somewhere in this region, in this area. So all of this, it was too much emotional. But overall, what kept people there was not obligation. It was conviction. And the team in Kharkiv knew exactly what it meant to stay. These were not abstract decisions. They were made day by day, sometimes hour by hour, what to do, how to proceed. And yeah, it's a good example of this dedication, probably about what we're speaking about, this humanity, about patient centricity at the end. So how people understood their purpose, and that becomes personal.
Wow. So the site in Kharkiv continued operating through active bombardment purely through human conviction, right, and through the dedication of everybody working on the site and working with the patients. That is absolutely astonishing. You've spoken obviously a lot about the need for sponsors and CROs to hear that Ukraine shouldn't be written off as a location for clinical research. Obviously, it's still an area of conflict in that regard, and we all know that activity in Ukraine has slowed down tremendously. What would you want the CROs and the sponsors to understand that they currently do not when it comes to Ukraine specifically?
Yeah, I started this my loud speaking about Ukraine probably 4 years ago. For me, it was like internal duty just to remind about ourselves, about our industry, about our patients, about our medical professionals. And I want them to see beyond the headlines, to understand the human reality behind the situation. Ukraine is not just a place of risk. It's a place of commitment, resilience, the place of capabilities. And what people may not fully understand is how much effort it takes to continue under these conditions, and how much that effort reflects the dedication of the team here. And when you choose to work with Ukraine, you're not just accessing the market. Yeah, you're partnering with people who have proven under the hardest circumstances they will not give up easily. And we see the new clinical trials, they're coming to Ukraine. Of course, it's not like it was before. So before the war, we've got 600 plus active clinical trials, 200-300 new clinical trials were approved each year. Of course, now we've got like 70, 80 new clinical trials coming to Ukraine, but they are coming. And this is such a hope. This is such a part of the new life for people. They believe in the future for everyone, for patients, for our doctors as well. So, and that was my reason to say about this, that we as a nation would deserve to be on the map of the world map, yeah, where the people deserve to be inside the community, inside the clinical research community, for our doctors, for our medical professionals who can still understand that they're the same doctor, the same PI as someone from the United States, from Poland, from China. For our patients, that they still have this access to medication, especially now when we've got this limitation especially during the first years of war. It was such a limitation of the number of medication that were available on the market due to this shipment delays, issues, or even cancellations of even to the chemistry. Just as a person can go and buy this. It was not possible even to buy if you have money. Now we have this, of course, financial issues of all of the people inside the country. You can imagine how difficult it is to maintain them well-being there. So they're limited by this possibility. They're limited financially. They're limited physically to get proper treatment, proper examination even. And clinical trial for them, it's the option how they can come and get this access to treatment, to examination there. And there is also a sense sometimes the decisions are made far away from the reality on the ground. And I would want more more trust, and more willingness to engage with complexity rather than stepping away from it. It's doable. We confirm this with the new clinical studies coming. We confirm that we can do clinical research in the same way, with the same quality as it was before, and as it's going on in other countries. And even I've got this example of one of my studies that were conducted the previous year in Ukraine. We've got such a good feedback from our patients who are sending these messages for our doctor regarding the better quality of life, that they started to understand what does it mean to have a finally the normal quality of life. And if previously we were struggling as everywhere, to find these patients, to find the proper patients, to convince them to participate in clinical trials, now we haven't got such a problem. We just need trials, and our patients, they're waiting for them.
Yeah, so Ukraine is still very much there, is still very much ready to conduct clinical trials. So don't shy away from it is the main message, right? What would you say, the international clinical research community do well throughout this period of active conflict, and where do you think it perhaps could have done better when it comes to Ukraine specifically?
No, our story, it was a good example, how our industry can react, how we can collaborate, and how we can hear each other and hear our needs. And there were moments of real kindness, messages, this flexibility. People were trying to help however they could. There were these donations, humanitarian shipments to Ukraine. When we're speaking about clinical research during these first weeks, it was such as uncertainty and stress for everyone, but we understood that we need to help our patients, and especially for oncological patients. And I usually made this example of my patient from Ukraine, a young girl with an oncology, lymphoma Hodgkin, and this was for her the only one way how she was maintaining her life being in one specific clinical trial. And when shipments were stopped, she was informed that there is any other option available in Ukraine for her, because she cannot continue her participation in a clinical trial anymore. This would be the last chemotherapy injection, and that's all. And we we were working so closely with our colleagues in Poland. It was a very strong and good communication between the regulatory authorities, people from both of the countries. There were this association, GCP association in Poland, close connection with sites. And we did such a huge work with quick guidelines, with quick notifications, some instructions, how it's possible to be done, that we were successfully transferring our patients to Poland. It was 14 in Pratia sites, but there were more patients transferring to other sites in Poland and neighboring countries as well, and that showed how united we can be if it goes to our patients, to the main actually theme of our work in the clinical research, and that was amazing. Of course, we've got some not so happy end stories. Some of the patients we were not able to be aligned and to be quick in these narrow windows between the visits. Some of the patients on this being on the stress, you can imagine, so moving to another country, their parameters were not so nice when they came to the site and sponsored refused to continue this patient's participation in the study. But overall, we showed that we can be united, we can work like one big mechanism in helping our patients, and that's actually the main work and the sense of our work in clinical research. But there were also moments where that felt isolating, and decisions to pause or withdraw were sometimes made very quickly. And from our perspective, it felt like the full picture wasn't always considered. It's understandable. People were reacting on uncertainty. People were reacting on unpredictable situation that were not counted in any business plans, risk management plans in any of the company. But when you're on the ground, those decisions have very real consequences for patients and teams. And that's what we saw, and many people, they lost this possibility to continue their participation in clinical research and to continue the treatment and proper treatment and examination with their chronic diseases especially. And I think the lesson is that the support is not just about intention. It's about staying engaged even when the situation becomes uncomfortable or complicated. And I think our industry is still learning how to balance these two.
It is obviously something quite difficult to balance, but obviously what I'm getting from it, and the message of hope is when humanity comes together, great things can be achieved together. You obviously now you lead operations across 7 countries, I think. What was navigating? What obviously you've navigated really extreme circumstances. What has that taught you about leadership that you think you wouldn't have learned any other way?
Yeah, due to this situation that had happened in my life. So I had this experience now for these 4 years to looking on the operations from the global perspective, from the centralization of the processes, not only like a single person staying in the country, but like the person who can oversee the work in the multinational environment with people with different mentality, with different mindset. People who are coming to our network with different level of maturity, with different backgrounds, and all of them, they should be engaged under one vision, under one mission. And it has taught me that leadership is less about control, but more about clarity. And people don't need perfect answers. They need this honesty, direction, and trust to what you are saying and what you are doing. I also learned that this importance of decentralization. And decentralization, I mean empowering local teams to make decisions quickly, because actually they understand their realities better than anyone else. This is what I knew from being only a part of the company as one country. And actually, these are the best people who can advise, who can make the decision. They just need this clarity from you and understanding the direction where they need to go. And they will make the best decisions, whatever is possible to do. And finally, it reinforced that empathy is not optional, and you cannot lead effectively if you are not truly listening to what your people are going through. So you need to understand their issues, their challenges. You need to try to find out the way how to combine the needs of the company, and especially the bigger company is, the more difficult it is to to align with everyone, to take into consideration everyone's needs, difficulties, and challenges. But that's the way how the best work can done.
Absolutely. Empathy is a key part of it. And as you say, empowering the local teams to make decisions quickly is quite essential. Okay. Obviously, we all speak about clinical research with the patient at the heart of it all, and the whole reason we're all in this ecosystem is supporting the patient throughout their difficult journeys. When you're managing blackouts, active bombarding, cold chain failures, staff who may be sitting in shelters while they respond, how do you hold on to your purpose? How do you carry on? How do you keep the hope?
Oh, yeah, in those moments, the purpose is not something you have to remind yourself of. It's something you feel very strongly, just like the part of your daily work. You're waking up with this feeling, with this purpose, and you go to bed with the same feeling inside you. And when everything becomes very difficult, the question becomes very simple. Who needs you right now? So you just need to understand where you can implement this, your abilities, your capabilities, possibilities, to whom it's more important exactly today to get it from you. And it's no longer theoretical in our case. It's about real patients who are relying on you. It's about real people like clinical research staff, your medical professionals that you need to adapt these processes very quickly, sometimes on 180 degrees or even 360, maybe coming back to the same point, but only making some of the extra actions and activities during that period of time. And we think about our patients who haven't got any other option. As I said you previously, they really required this support from us more than ever before. And that makes the work feel very real, very immediate. It also brings a sense of dignity to what we do, because even in this chaos, we're trying to preserve something stable and something meaningful.
Wow. Okay. There will be people listening to this who never had to question whether the building they're working in is safe, and who can't possibly comprehend what you and your staff and your patients have gone through. What would you like them to take from your story, if anything?
Well, I would want them to value the sense of safety. It's more precious than it might seem. To value the peace, to value the opportunities which you have and you have do and fulfill in the calm and safe place where you are. If we're speaking about clinical research industry, that remember that behind every data set, every protocol, every patient ID number in our ECRF, there are real people, our patients, our research teams who are making this, and actually everyone who works in this industry to maintain these operations, to make them fulfilled and to make them real. And I want to say some words about adaptability, because sometimes we're not too much focus on this. And this is a new type of strength for me. So you don't have to wait for extreme circumstances to practice this flexibility, collaboration, empathy even. Those things should be part of the work already. And in 2024, our Ukrainian filmmaker, Mstislav Chernov, he was receiving Oscar for the documentary 20 Days in Mariupol, and started his speech with the words, "I wish I had never made this film." And I believe each Ukrainian would say the same. We wish we had never told this story. But if our story does anything, I hope it makes people pause and think about what truly matters in the work we do daily.
Wow. Okay. So what is next for you and for Pratia Ukraine?
The next chapter, then in the future, that it's not something I think about the terms of ambition, honestly saying alone. It's something I feel in terms of continuity, responsibility, care. There is still a part of me that still measures time before and after. So when I think about the future, it's not just about growth, expansion. It's about rebuilding a sense of normality that was so abruptly taken away from us. It's about creating something unstable in a place where stability has not been guaranteed anymore. And for Pratia, Ukraine, I believe that the next chapter means continuing to open doors to our patients who might may not have any other chance here and other options in their life for now. It means proving again and again that even in the most difficult circumstances, quality and care, they can exist. But more than that, it means taking care of people who made this possible. Our teams who stayed, who adapted, who carried on when it would have been easier to stop. Honestly saying, just to stop and to agree with this reality that we've got. And a good outcome, it's very personal definition, I believe now, for everyone, not only for me. It's not just numbers, expansion, KPIs that we've got in the big companies especially, or recognition. It should be much more quieter, I believe. It's knowing that people who stood through this period can finally exhale, to see a team work without a background sense of fear, and the patient who can walk in simply to your side because they choose it, not because this was the only one available option for this person. And on the personal level, for me, a good outcome would be able to look back at this time one day and to feel that despite everything, we protected something important, that we didn't let circumstances define the limits of what we can actually do, because we kept going. Not perfectly, with mistakes, with fear, but with some bigger purpose.
Wow, I think I'm taking so many incredible lessons of empathy, of determination, of dignity, of hope, of humanity from everything you've shared with us, Anna. And I'm very grateful for you coming on to speak about what is obviously quite a difficult subject at times. And so I really truly appreciate your time. Where can our viewers see you, hear you next?
Surely, I believe that we can speak about this, about our clinical research industry, because honestly saying, we need to bring these examples to the audience. We need to show that despite all of the challenges, despite all of this craziness that is and chaos around us in the world, it doesn't mean that we couldn't continue our work, that we couldn't follow this, our main principle of humanity in clinical research, because we are doing actually the great work, and our people, they need it, they are waiting for it, and we must do this. We haven't got any other choices.
There's no other choice but to continue. Thank you so much, Anna. I think both myself and our listeners will have quite a lot to think of after this conversation. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you once again for your invitation. I hope that we will have more time to speak with you, to discuss different topics, and to continue what we're doing together.
Absolutely. Thank you.